Kansas State was one of the bigger surprises in 2023 to be able to win the Big 12 championship, finish the year 10-4 was a huge year for the Wildcats. And they're looking to get back to the top of the Big 12. It's going to be more difficult this year, but the 10 guys we'll talk about today can make that happen. Kansas State is so easy to root for because they have so many underrated players that you don't really know until they're playing in the spotlight. Austin Moore is one of those players. This is a guy who didn't get a single star in recruiting for any service. And he is someone who had a big impact last year. 87 tackles, 10 tackles for loss. He has 109 tackles on his career. So he's someone who's making plays for the Wildcats. It's just that nobody really knows who he is. And that's the best thing about Kansas State. Kansas State is one of those teams that doesn't get a ton of 4-star guys. You probably don't get any 5-star guys, and you get a bunch of 3 stars all the way down to no stars. And that's the best thing because they recruit so well. They know what their culture is. And Chris Kleiman has the ability to find that talent and bring in the correct talent to make Kansas State really tough. Even if they're not winning the Big 12, Kansas State is a headache to face because they're so good at one, establishing a good culture, two, recruiting the guys to fit that culture, and three, playing well together where they're playing as a unit instead of a bunch of individuals. Losing some of their players, you lose a guy like Deuce Vaughn, that's obviously going to hurt, but DJ Giddens is back and gets a chance to showcase his talent and brings kind of a different style to this offense. At 6'1", 212 pounds, he's going to seem like a giant compared to Deuce Vaughn after what we saw last year. And DJ Giddens has the ability to be a potential big time player. He averaged 5.8 yards per carry last year, 518 yards. And I think the biggest thing is that he will share the backfield with another guy. And that shouldn't be news. That shouldn't be a new thing for him, especially because he shared the backfield with Vaughn. He was the backup. It's just a matter of how many touches will he get. Treaton Ward comes in from Florida State, and a lot of people are excited about what he could do for the Wildcats. When you lose a talent like Deuce Vaughn, you're losing an explosive weapon who did a ton for this offense. You need to find someone that can replace his production or multiple players that can replace that production. Ward and Giddens will be two of those guys. Ward had 628 yards last year, averaged 6.6 yards per carry. He is an explosive weapon. He was for Florida State. It's just that I think the things got too crowded for him at Florida State. You need a new beginning. You go to a program that's looking for their RB1, he can give them that. And that will be huge for a team, like I said, that was really good running the football last year. 15th in the country running the football. That would be something to keep an eye on with the talent that they lost. Another group that lost some talent is the secondary, but Kobe Savage is back. You look at Julius Brents, probably got most of the attention last year, and for good reason. At one, he stands 6'4", so everybody kind of looked at him as a future NFL player. But now you get a guy like Kobe Savage back, who doesn't really have the size, but he can play really well. He can play and command the spotlight, similar to what Brents did at certain times. And having a guy like Savage back gives you a veteran who knows what they're doing. You're losing a couple pieces in that secondary, so finding ways to get players up to speed will be the biggest thing. Another huge loss for Kansas State was Malik Knowles. Phillip Brooks doesn't necessarily fill the Malik Knowles role, but he gives them an experienced wide receiver that could have a major impact this year. It could take a step forward in terms of being the go-to guy. 587 yards and 4 touchdowns last year. He's also a good returner, so it makes an impact in multiple facets of the game. That is another thing that will help quite a bit. If you're able to do multiple things for your team, which Kansas State has a few guys that will do that for both offense, whether it's offense and special teams, defense and special teams, they have some guys that can be explosive. And again, another guy, no stars from any recruiting service. He is someone who, again, flew under the radar and probably because he's 5'8", 171. But this is a player who has a chip on his shoulder, and that's Kansas State's. That's what they do really well, is they have guys who have chips on their shoulder, and they are willing to play as a unit. They are willing to play for their team to prove people wrong. Now they do get some 3-star, 4-star talent, so it's not like they don't get anybody. It's just that guys like Phillip Brooks are fun to watch because they fly under the radar. It's almost like you're getting a steal if you're climbing in that staff. Now, players that they do get that are 3 stars and 4 stars have a ton of potential. Khalid Duke is one of those players. At 6'4", 246 pounds. It's easy to see why teams wanted to bring him to campus. It's just that he chose to, of coming all the way from Atlanta, Georgia, he chose to be with the Wildcats, and now he's playing the defensive end position. If he can stay healthy, he is one of the more disruptive players on this team. He has the potential to be a defensive Big 12 player of the year, just like we saw last year for Kansas State. You have another player who can step up and fill that role. That is something that will be huge for a defense I think the defense at times was fairly average, but I think the defense at times also was really, really good. So if you're finding ways to be consistent, elevate your game a little bit, you're going to help this team tremendously. Another player to keep an eye on is Daniel Green. Daniel Green has the potential to be one of the best linebackers in college football. 6'3", 245 pounds. Another guy comes from Portland, Oregon. I don't think you expect a lot of guys from Oregon or Georgia to come to Kansas State, but here we are. Daniel Green has the ability, again, if he stays healthy, to be one of the best players in college football. 219 tackles for his career, 28 and a half tackles for loss. He knows how to make plays. It's just a matter of how consistent can he be and how often will he be on the field. If he can control those two things, he's in business. One of the biggest questions for this team this year will be the quarterback position. Will Howard returns after playing a good chunk of the season, and we saw some potential in him. We saw a number of really exciting throws, a number of good throws, especially in the Big 12 championship game. We saw some really exciting things from him. We saw the potential in his game. We saw his ability to elevate this program to new heights if he is able to be consistent. He still completed under 60% of his passes last year. You want to see that number increase. 15 touchdowns to 4 interceptions is pretty good. I think we saw him flip a switch. I think we saw the confidence, and you're going to get a player who can not only throw the ball, but you can probably see him run the ball as well. At 6'5", 242 pounds, he could be one of those sleeper players that we're talking about in the NFL draft that people suddenly are big fans of. And that will be huge for a Kansas State offense, especially the passing attack that is looking to rediscover now a go-to player. Now, a guy that he could find frequently and could fill that role is Bennson Anderson, the tight end, fullback, whatever they use him as, but mostly tight end is a huge playmaker for this team. He's a huge playmaker for this offense, and he's a big target at 6'4", 245 pounds. 447 yards and 4 touchdowns. Not the greatest production, but it's not like Kansas State was an air raid team. That's pretty quality production from a tight end who could now take a step forward and be even better for this team. And a lot of that has to do with the skill positions, but protecting them up front will be a big key as well. Cooper Beebe is back at guard, a potential All-American player for the Kansas State Wildcats and a tone setter up front. 37 games of experience. He will only add more to his plate. And this offensive line plays a big role, like I said. If the skill positions do their part, it's because the offensive line is helping them out, is getting them into space, and doing a lot of really exciting things. So this is a Kansas State team. Again, Chris Kleiman is a great coach in terms of getting his team to overachieve. He did it at NASU to be able to get them to new heights, to get them to championship level, and he just did it at Kansas State. Now they have a target on their back. I think the Big 12 is going to be a tough conference to win this year because Texas will be better, Oklahoma will be better, but Kansas State is a team that still stays in that conversation. They're almost back to being an underdog because a lot of people are picking Texas and Oklahoma to win the conference. So it's just right where Kansas State wants to be. It's right where Chris Kleiman wants to be. And it's only a matter of how many times can they surprise people in 2023.